Hi, this is Denise Grader. This is Classroom Business Enterprise. This is how I did it. I'm going to talk about middle school and high school implementation of this program today. All the smiley faced kids there on that slideshow are 2024 AP Micro Class Business participants. All right, so feel free to follow along with this presentation at the following bit.ly link. And then also, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to email me at my email address there, dmgrader@tsc.k12.in.us, and I can answer any of the questions that you have from things that I did in my own classes. All right, so my background with CBE and just classroom businesses in general, I have on here a tale as old as time, in that my first experience with a classroom business was in fifth grade as a student back in the late 1900s, as the kids say today. And I can still remember what I sold in my business. We sold mailing addresses to the stars, which seems very antiquated today with the internet. But back in the day, you had to buy a magazine, you had to have the information in the back. And so I sold a few of them. It probably wasn't the best business, but I remember doing it. I remember making money off that. I also remember us having a mini economy in our classroom. And I mention this because it has stuck with me all these years ago. That one interaction in that classroom in fifth grade has stuck with me so much that I know that implementing a classroom business in your classroom will stick with your students as well. I first attended a CBE workshop in the summer of 2008 led by Dr. Harlan Day. And I completed two CBEs in my classrooms in the 08-09 school year and the 9-10 school year in middle school. Then I revisited CBE in high school in the 16-17 school year, and I attended another CBE in 2017. And then I've been doing a classroom business in my AP microeconomics classes since 2017. The only exception was the spring of 2021 during COVID. So actually in 2020, we had the business started and then COVID shut us down. But in 2021, we didn't quite know how to make that work. So we just played pretend that year, and we did some planning for our hopeful business in the future. So like I said, I first did a CBE in middle school. I did it in eighth grade communications class, which is something that Tippecanoe School Corporation used to have when they had their middle school model in the middle schools. And it was a hybrid English slash technology course. So I had a little bit of leeway to be able to fit these standards in and utilize some of the reading and writing standards that we had to do and some of the technology standards that we had to do. I remember we made locker boards, which I couldn't find an example of the ones we made back in 2008. The modern ones look a lot cuter than what we had, but we also sold sweatpants, and then we made some keychains as well. And like I said, I completed this in a short unit. All the standards, production, and sales happened within that time. It was like a month total, start to finish, that we did that. So if you're wondering timing wise, that's how we did it the first time. Then we did it the second year. I was there and I was in an eighth grade social studies classroom. I fit the classroom business enterprise into the curriculum into the second industrial revolution. We did it in concert with that material, but again, it was only probably about a month start to finish that we worked on it. And we divided class periods up between U.S. history content, business content. So we might split it in half, thirds, whatever we need to do to get through the job applications and talk about all the economic standards. And again, it was probably a month or less from start to finish that we did that. We sold paw print scarves that year. I was at Southwestern Middle School, and they are the Wildcats. And so this isn't the exact one that we did, but it was the best I could find on Pinterest to be able to show you. They were very simple. We cut strips of fleece, and fleece doesn't ravel, so we're able to cut the fringes, and it gave us a lot of opportunity to teach the skills. Also production. We did Oh, we didn't do them start to finish. We did more of a factory setup where each person had their role to do. So one person was cutting the links, one person was cutting the fringes, and so on. And then we sold those at some wrestling meets and some basketball games that winter. Now, in the end of the 2009 through 2010 school year, I moved to the high school, and this was during the riff in teaching and the Great Recession there. And so I got shifted to teaching economics in the high school. And so I didn't actually do a classroom business in real life. We did some mock businesses. And we're going to share with you a folder at the end of this presentation and also in a follow-up email that has some resources in it, and that folder contains some documents for this kind of mock business, if you will. I called it creating a business, but not IRL. But it does have some fun things in there, and it is actually kind of fun little unit to do if you want to teach business, but you're just kind of scared to do it in real life. But I did use a lot of the materials from the economics and entrepreneurship book there to do those activities. But also when I got to high school, I didn't have any funding because the money that I had for the middle school, whatever I had left, stayed in the middle school. And if memory serves, I didn't have a lot left anyway because our sales weren't very good. And I think we did a mini classroom party. But the money stays with the school. So remember that as you're planning your projects as well, that the grant money that you get through this workshop stays with the school that you're at. So then after a few years of being in the high school, I started to teach AP Economics. And AP Microeconomics is, I'm going to be honest with you, it's kind of dry. I don't know if any of you teach that or not, but it can be difficult for the kids to be able to hang their hat on any of the concepts because they just are too far removed from thinking like an entrepreneur, thinking like a business owner. And so an idea was hatched to do a Shark Tank, if you will. If you're familiar with that show, people pitch ideas and the sharks fund it or don't fund it. And so I reached out to Gina Boyd, who at the time I had known from previous CBEs. I had seen her present at one of the early CBEs and was just like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I want to be like her. She's just doing an awesome job with this. And I just want to do that. Well, lo and behold, serendipitously, my son, who's in this slideshow here, is a little guy with a plaid shirt on, was in her class, and they were doing a classroom business, and there he's holding his little taco earbud holders. But I reached out to her, and I was like, hey, is there some kind of way we can do a collaboration? Because I would like to do this again in my classroom, but I don't have any money. And she was like, yeah, I think we can make something happen. So she did a little prep work getting her class ready to be sharks. And I did a little prep work with my class, getting them ready to pitch their ideas. And so that first day of that semester, I said to the class, literally, you can't stand it when what? And we started brainstorming ideas. And again, that I can't stand it when paper is in that economics and entrepreneurship book there. And we filled that paper out and we narrowed it down to what we thought were the best ideas as a class. I pitched the idea to them that they were going to be going over to the elementary school into a multi-age classroom of fourth and fifth graders and pitching their idea. And they were going to be funding us and determining whether or not our business plans were going to get any money behind them. And I would say this was nerve-wracking, but it was also very easy because if you follow the book, it's got the basics in it for you to set up a classroom business. Just follow the instructions in there. We also have created a kind of step-by-step checklist that you will get in the shared folder that is just like, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. So condensed even more so than in the book. And so as a class, we came up with a couple ideas and we picked the top 3 to present to Mrs. Boyd's class, and we went over to her classroom during my class period's meeting time, which happened to be, I think it was second hour at that time, and we presented them. I kind of tweaked it a little bit, and then I knew which one was probably going to get funded. I think one of them was like a pencil a bookstore type thing, or a pencil sales box, pencil machine. The coffee shop was what we ended up settling on, and we negotiated a contract with them. They were pretty hard negotiators. Oh, the third one was Candygrams. That's what it was. I just remember that. So her students decided to fund us, and we called it Mav Mocha. They loaned us $300 with a rate of return of 25% of the total Mav Mocha sales up till spring break, and then 10% of the total sales if the business was able to go beyond spring break. And now we had to pay back the $300 that they loaned us by March 2nd, because that was when Mrs. Boyd's class was going to start their business. And so I think we gave them a pretty decent sized check at the end of the year. We paid back their $300, and then they got their 25%. And we did not sell beyond spring break. It was just a lot for us, and we had to get ready for our AP tests. Now, planning for the business itself, the first 2 weeks, and again, this is in my AP microeconomics class. So we spent every day the first 2 weeks planning, and we were using lessons from economics and entrepreneurship mixed with some of the AP micro standards from Unit 1. And you can see there on the pictures here, this was some of their early conjectures of how much money they thought we could make. This is our first sign from Mav Mocha and what time we were open. Eventually, after the first couple of weeks, we're kind of able to settle into a more content-friendly schedule, I guess. We launch early so that we can start selling because we don't have a lot of dates. We start usually by the end of January, and then we sell on 1 day a week. And so eventually, though, we settle into what would be a more normal schedule where we're devoting 1 day a week to the business, which is usually on Friday when we sell. And then the other 4 days we are devoted to learning content like a traditional classroom. But we're always using examples from our business. So when we're talking about economies of scale, we talk about how we're never going to be an economy of scale. When we do cost curves, we're doing our cost curves. So everything that we use example-wise is from us. All right, and then continuing to plan, we wrote a business plan in more detail than our pitch to the Sharks. We were able to identify what we needed to buy, what roles we needed to fill, so what jobs we had. We were able to identify our competition. We then sent out surveys to the staff and students about how much they would be willing to pay, and then how much we would be willing to, how much they would be willing to pay, what items would they be willing to buy from us. And then also we kept the staff in the loop too, because I feel like I skipped over this, but one of the first things that you need to do, and I don't know where my slide went because I know I had a slide on this, but is to get approval from your admin. That was the very first thing that we did before we ever even reached out to Mrs. Boyd, was to make sure this was going to be okay. And then all along the way, we made sure that everything was okay. And especially working with our business office, my building is very particular on how they want the money handled and how we buy things, which sometimes might be a headache for others. But for me, I just make it a job for one of my students, and that's their job. So then we identified our productive resources, what we needed to start. We were able to borrow some things at the beginning. We eventually bought some things. We had a very generous donation from one of our counselors who had gotten some money. Our school had gotten some money for doing surveys or something, and he bought us a really nice Bond industrial coffee maker that we still use today, some air pots. So that really helped us get started. Students applied for jobs then once we identified what jobs we needed. And we found some really nice free software online to get us started. We used for our cash register, our sales app. It was actually run through iOS on our phone. So I downloaded it. We would use my cell phone as a register. and it's called Loyverse Point of Sale, Loyverse. It was a really nice free version at first, and now they've really scaled it back and they want us to pay. Unfortunately, I'm not able to pay for a subscription with our business funds because of the way we'd have to pay it. Our school credit cards can't do a continual subscription on them. So we did eventually open for business, and this was our first opening store here. And Mrs. Boyd's daughter, Kinley, Gina Boyd's daughter, Kinley, is in the picture here. These were some of our borrowed Vitamixers from the very first year that we did smoothies. So then moving forward and kind of building on that idea of jobs, we determined that we had several sectors of our business that we needed to cover. We have a finance department that does all our financial stuff. They deal with counting down the drawers on Friday after we sell. They deal with purchase orders. They deal with the business office in our front admin office. We also have a logistics group that deals with all of our productive resources and moving our equipment every Friday. We have an advertising group that really is fun for kids to be able to be creative with. Something that we started out with was just, posters hung up in the hallway, lots of posters. We also have a TV program at our school called MAV TV. They were really good about giving us commercial spots and making commercials for us. We had some overlap in that some of our students in AP Micro were in the MAV TV class. They made some really nice commercials. And then here more recently, since about 2019, 2020, we've had a decent Instagram page, or whatever you call it, whatever the lingo is for that. And some kids have had a lot of fun with that. These two Instagram posts are from this last school year, 2025. There is one there with our line in the morning. We sell out of the concession stand area in the high school, which is near the student entrance, which is one of the places that we realize we probably are going to get the most foot traffic. It's also got a sink, which we need to have to be able to wash our hands and wash all our stuff up each week. And then one of their drinks that we were called Smoothie Stampede this year. We've been under several names, but this was one we went back to. And the students did a commercial for a Fortnite drink called Slurp Juice. And so we made one that had edible glitter in it, and they actually were really cool. We found the recipe online. It's just Powerade and Gatorade, but there's some kind of scientific reaction when you pour them correctly. They don't mix because one of them is like a diet and one is not. And then we put some edible glitter in it, and the kids thought it was great. And then the profits were really high on that drink because it didn't really cost us much to make it. So then a typical Friday looks like this. And I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but we produce one day a week. We do produce from the end of January until after spring break. And again, that's different than what I did in my other classroom businesses. But this is very much generated by the students. The students want to do this. They come in before school starts. I don't have to beg them to do it. They love doing it. And so that's really nice. I don't mind coming in early. It's fun. It's a learning experience for them. And so it's a good time. So we sell from 7 a.m. to 7:20, which is before the school day starts. So we're not stepping on the toes of any government regulations there. And usually kids start getting there about 6:40 to 6:45. Everyone is assigned a job. Now, depending on the size of the class, we may not need everyone to show up. The last few years, though, it seems like almost everybody has a role that is being utilized on that Friday. And we do have there'll be a survey that's sent out that if someone has an event going on a Friday, they know they're not going to be there, they'll make sure and let everyone know so that they don't get scheduled. We set up some timers for our coffee pots so that they kick on before we get to school because our coffee maker takes a little bit of time to get heated up. We have an app, like I said, for our cashier that helps us keep track of how much we have sold. I know in the economics and entrepreneurship book, there is a paper version of how to track sales. We do the electronic version just because we have so little time and we have to be able to ring things up pretty quickly. It's nice because it gives the students the ability to put in all of our products beforehand, and they can also calculate profits from that because we can put in our costs for each item, and they just think it's kind of cool. We do produce in batches. So we will make a batch of, let's say, strawberry banana smoothies, and then we know that that makes 3 large smoothies, and we just kind of keep the blenders running either until time runs out. So usually about 7:15, I'll tell them to stop making smoothies, or we actually run out of stuff, which is common because it's hard for us to kind of gauge how many we're going to sell each week. We guesstimate based on previous data, and we have seen a direct correlation between a lack of advertising and a lack of sales, which they learn that pretty quickly, that they have to make sure that that marketing and sales team continues putting stuff on Instagram. All right, so profits and future plans. We saved some for future businesses, obviously, and since the business was such a success the first year, we decided we would save a bulk of the profits for the future. That class was very strict on spending. They wouldn't even let themselves have a hot chocolate for free. They paid for everything, and they were very miserly in how we spent things, which I appreciate because that's how I feel like a real entrepreneur would be, very miserly in how that they're spending things, and if anyone is getting anything for free. We did treat ourselves to a breakfast on the last day of school with our final exams. And then we have subsequently been able to expand what we're able to do with our profits and our future plans. So we have done some philanthropy, and we talk about that with the students and about how important that is to pay it forward to help other people out. So we have bought items for the Unified Track team. We have bought books for individual teachers' classroom libraries. We have bought goods to donate to Mab Threads, which is like our school's clothes closet, and they have hygiene items in there as well. And so we bought some things for those places. And then in 2019, we started paying for AP exams. We kind of look at it as their labor costs. And so the class decides based on how many kids are taking the AP test, how much money they want to give towards those tests, because we're a full price test. So kids are paying $89 to $97 as it's been over the years. And so last year we were able to pay fully 2 AP tests. There was only two kids that were taking it, so they got theirs paid fully. In previous years, we've given anywhere from $40 to $75 to help offset that cost. Now the kids have to pay for the test up front, and then we reimburse on the backside. We can't just hand them a check. And again, that's because of how our business is set up through our business office. And then we also pay ourselves. So you might have noticed there's 2 pictures in this slideshow that are very similar. Over the last couple of years, when we have started reattending the CBE showcase in the spring, we have made it a little event. And instead of eating the Subway at the CBE, we go over to Cane's. And the kids love Cane's. I don't know why chicken is so, like, they just love it. And so 2 years in a row, we've kind of taken this picture, if you will, of the class enjoying their Cane's. I would imagine that's probably going to continue. They really, really like that. We also continue to do the traditional last day of school final exam breakfast. They really like that too. And so it's fun. They work hard. And so I tell them we work hard and we play hard too. So they get to have a lot of fun in the end. So 2025 was my most recent iteration of CBE. We revisited Smoothie Stampede. So usually at the beginning planning stages, I will let the kids decide. We'll go through the I can't stand it when, and usually we come back around to some kind of a food or beverage business that, I mean, they see the information from the previous years and they're like, yeah, that's successful. Let's continue doing that. But to make it their own, I usually let them rename, rebrand, do all of the things. I encourage them this year to adopt a previously successful name and logo so that we could regain some of that planning time in the early stages. I've seen over the years sometimes that takes a little while to decide on the name and the logo. Everyone has very strong opinions, so I just suggested that we revisit one of our previous logos, and they really embraced that. And so we went back to the Smoothie Stampede. We actually had in our 2024 and 2025 businesses some of Gina Boyd's original sharks in those classes. So that was super fun to have that full circle moment for them. And here's the picture of them in the CBE there at Purdue. And again, all smiles, all fun. Most of the classes only bring like 2 or 3 kids, but I kind of ask if we can all come. I usually have a very small class or small-ish class, and they're pretty much well behaved. But we had a very successful semester. And here we are at the CBE again. So we calculated at the end of March that we had total revenue of $1,896 starting with our sales on January 31st. We had total costs of $827. So our total profit was $1,069.78. And again, we spent money on buying some books for a teacher's classroom library. We had a special education teacher who needed some books that were all different reading levels. So she made a cart up and we purchased those for her. We had our field trip lunch, which was Cane's. We had our last day of school breakfast, which was Chick-fil-A. And then we also the kids wanted to purchase some fidget toys, some squishy balls, all those fun things. The kids had played with the ones I already had all semester, and they kind of had worn them out. So they wanted to give back new ones for the next year's class. And then we also bought some other like little supplies for the classroom, things that we needed for the business that also could be multi-usage, like a little laminating machine. We found a lot of times when we had price changes, we couldn't laminate the new menus, and that was kind of a pain for us because we had to take it to the library, and that would take an extra day. And so we bought some things for the classroom. And there they are again talking to some other students from another school that had a classroom business.
Hello,
now some
my
skills.
name is Megan Melton, and I'm a student at Purdue studying supply chain
Pause
management.
that for a second before
year
Megan
ago,
starts
I took
sharing
AP
with you.
Microeconomics with Mrs.
So every year
Grader.
I have the kids do a
I was and
reflection
still am
of
grateful
the
to be a part
business
of this
from start to
experience because
finish.
it benefited
And this
me
is
in
really
so many
important
ways.
data for
Our class business
me
was a shop
in
that sold
knowing
drinks
what I
and
need to
snacks in the
change for
morning
the
called
future.
Smoothie
Maybe some
Stampede.
things come up that I
Now,
don't
our business
see as
wasn't
we're
one where the
going
teacher
through
did
all
all the
of
work and the
this.
students sat
But
around
I
and
have had a lot of
kinda
students who
helped.
have went
Our
into
class played a
business school
central role and took on
after
much of the
being a part of this
responsibility in running
class
the
and
business.
engaging in
I worked in the accounting
entrepreneurship this
department,
way.
so I was deciding what we needed to order each week and writing out the POs for
soft
Mrs. Grader
skills
to
that
order.
kids are going to learn from
My
just
favorite part
talking
of
and
our small
presenting in the
business
CBE,
was
but
working in the
also
mornings because
interacting
I
with their
liked seeing all of my
classmates when they're
classmates and
coming
our
to them
regular
as
customers
customers
each week.
is just
Working in our class
it's just
business gave
awesome
me
for them.
hands-on experience
They're going to
with
learn
teamwork,
about data
communication,
analysis, marketing,
operations,
advertising,
and managing
purchasing.
resources.
But
All
then
skills that
also, I'm going
continue
to
to
have
support
Megan
me as a
talk to you
supply chain
here
student
about
and will
what
guide
she
me in my
learned. She
future
is a
career.
freshman at
Thank
Purdue,
you.
and
Hello, my
she
name is Megan Melton, and I'm a student at
agreed
Purdue
to make
studying
this
supply
video
chain
for me. I
management.
don't know if I can
A
back it
year
up, so
ago,
I'm just
I
going to be
took
quiet
AP
and let her
Microeconomics
talk.
with Mrs. Grader. I was and still am grateful to be a part of this experience because it benefited me in so many ways. Our class business was a shop that sold drinks and snacks in the morning called Smoothie Stampede. Now, our business wasn't one where the teacher did all the work and the students sat around and kind of helped. Our class played a central role and took on much of the responsibility in running the business. I worked in the accounting department, so I was deciding what we needed to order each week and writing out the POs for Mrs. Grader to order. My favorite part of our small business was working in the mornings because I liked seeing all of my classmates and our regular customers each week. Working in our class business gave me hands-on experience with teamwork, communication, operations, and managing resources, all skills that continue to support me as a supply chain student and will guide me in my future career. Thank you. Hello, My name is Megan Melton, and I am a student at Purdue studying supply chain management. A year ago, I
So
took
yeah,
AP
I mean, I
Microeconomics
just
with
told
Mrs.
her,
Grader.
I asked
I
Megan, I
was
said,
and
can you
still am
send me
grateful to
a
be a
short
part of
little
this
video
experience because it
about your
benefited me in
experience
so
with the
many
classroom
ways.
business?
Our class
And
business
she
was a
sent me
shop that
back
sold
that,
drinks
which
and
I think
snacks in
is
the morning
golden
called
in
Smoothie
showing
Stampede.
all the ways that
Now,
this
our
can
business wasn't
impact your
one where the teacher
students
did all the
and
work and the students like sat around and
how
like
much I
kind of
hope that you're
helped.
able
Our
and
class
willing
played a
to
central role
implement
and
this
took
in
on
your
much of the
classrooms
responsibility
this
in running the
year.
business.
And so lastly, I want to say good luck. The QR code up here will take you to the folder that I mentioned with different resources in it. I have modified a lot of the CBE resources in the book. A lot of them are digital, and I have numbered them in that folder accordingly. You will also be sent this by email, so don't worry if you don't have a phone handy to be able to scan this QR code. It will be sent out and by the PCEE office after the workshop, and it is a Google folder. And like I said, it's got the items in there for doing kind of a mock business, but then there's a folder in there that is the digital versions of things that I have created and used in my class. They are view only, so feel free to make your own copy and tweak, or at least see what I have done with them. And again, if you have any questions about anything that I did in any of my classroom businesses or what I currently am doing, please feel free to email me with any questions that you have. And thank you so much for listening to my presentation today. I hope that you find it beneficial, and I hope that you find it encouraging to implement a classroom business in your middle or high school classroom.